Do we have music? All right, welcome. This is a fun webinar hold. We'll get started in a couple minutes, folks. This is from our critically acclaimed webinar DJ album. If you're just joining, share where you're joining from in the chat.
Really everywhere, huh?
Everywhere.
Wow.
We got global. We got Paris. I saw Germany, Ontario, Canada, North Dakota. Chicago, Kim, represent. Oman. Ooh, I think I might win the distance.
Colombia.
Vietnam.
No, we just need
Colombia. I love Colombia.
And Australia. We touched every time.
Colombia is one of my favorite countries I've ever been to. Incredible place. Amazing. India. All right, we'll get started in just a minute here, folks. Give people a couple minutes to join. It is late in India. It's 8:30. It's not horrible. It's not too bad. We appreciate you joining us at 8:30 on a Wednesday.
Music is simultaneously motivating and relaxing.
I'm telling you, like you have to do it through Spotify and everything else. And then Zoom just needs like a play music and it has like a fade out feature. Great. There we go. All right, welcome everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm also assuming that one of our producers is going to be driving the screen share today. If that's not true, someone let me know. Nice, we're good to go. Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to leverage Operations Hub, specifically from sales ops and the sales persona. We're going to go through a couple of examples today, and then at the tail end, we're going to do Q&A, live workshopping. If you have things you're trying to build, if you're interested in how to build them, we'd love to chat with you guys about them. So please throw them in the Q&A if there's things specific to some of the uses that we go through or anything you guys are building yourselves. We'd love to talk about them. For introductions on my side, I'll go ahead and go first. I'm Connor. I've been on a bunch of these. I am the CEO of Aptitude. We're a HubSpot elite partner that focuses on RevOps and have done a ton of work with Operations Hub. And joining us today is Ryan, who leads our revenue operations services team.
Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. So in terms of what we're going to do today, so we're going to talk about first, we'll do a quick recap on what is Operations Hub, the different tiers, functionality of the actual product, and then we'll talk through a couple of workshops, and then we would love to take your guys' questions. So again, if you have anything you guys want to talk about over the course of this, please submit it in the Q&A. We'll do some live workshopping here at the end. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So first, we want to tell you guys a little bit around what is Operations Hub, why we think it's so significant, and why we're so excited. So you may know Operations Hub is the newest product and hub from HubSpot that focuses on connecting your application, syncing and cleaning your data, and automating parts of your business process and taking workflows to the next level. Ultimately, the goal of Operations Hub is to extend the power of HubSpot further than what you can simply do through click and config, as well as sync some of your other systems and products with some of that point and click configuration as well. In terms of ways that Operations Hub can be used, if you're currently a HubSpot customer or a prospective HubSpot customer, you can use Operations Hub to sync and clean some of your existing data inside of the HubSpot CRM. You can leverage my favorite feature, which is the custom coded programmable automation, building sort of custom JavaScript code directly into your workflows. Also doing some data quality automation, and you can use sort of different functionality on those to enhance some of your reporting capabilities as well, leveraging some of that custom code. There are two, if we jump ahead one slide here, two different current packages for Operations Hub that are very different. So we're going to talk about ways to use each, but there is an Operations Hub free, which you can have access to using some of those data sync functionalities. The paid tiers, which will primarily be what we're going to talk about today. One is Starter. So Starter for Operations Hub is going to get you two-way data sync between all of the supported applications. I think last time we did one of these webinars, that was contacts only. Since then, it now supports companies as well. Doing some field mappings, historical sync, third-party integrations, and then with the Starter product, you can add custom field mappings between all of your different tools. So to see those, if you go to the HubSpot app marketplace and you search under some of the data sync connected products, the ones that say sort of built by HubSpot are going to be supported via Operations Hub. You can do all of those for free. And then if you have the Starter tier, you'll be able to sync some custom fields and additional items as well. The next package is that professional tier, which is at the $800 a month. That's really going to expand and let you use some of the programmable automation, extend your workflow functionality, code directly in your workflows, trigger webhooks, and a lot of additional functionality on the professional side. And we're going to talk through kind of all of the above. So I am going to get into our first use case here. This is something you're going to be able to do, I believe, entirely with Starter, but Ryan, I will hand it to you to run through this particular use case.
Yeah, absolutely. So clean data is arguably the most important purpose, or really a CRM to be most useful. Data needs to be clean. So we're going to talk a little bit about how formatting and how we can go through and use Operations Hub to clean up data, especially in situations where doing a lot of importing spreadsheets, salespeople are copy pasting as well into the CRM. So I've talked a little bit about just having that unreliable data. It's going to be a problem very quickly. And the larger your sales force, the larger the problem will become. So we've got a workflow configuration to help you format and then enrich the data. So step one is really to go through and choose the enrollment trigger. So what part of our CRM are we going to target for formatting? Is it going to be a company, a contact? Do we need to format deals? And this can be something that is one time, it can be ongoing, just depending on your need. You can have it just continue to rerun. So in certain cases, we may be targeting specific industries as we're ramping up a certain outbound effort. And then again, just it can be something that's recurring on a specific field that is very often unclean, like capitalization. So for doing an outbound campaign, maybe reps are going to be sending sequences. You want to make sure that contact names, as an example, are formatted correctly. Last thing you want to do is look very unprofessional and sending someone an email, hey, Connor, with lowercase c. So we can actually go through, add a step in our workflow and select the format data action. And then there are a whole host of options from converting to Unix timestamps to changing date formats, adding numbers, removing HTML. There's a long list of options here. We're going to be doing capitalization. So again, making sure that email that you send when you merge in someone's first name, that it looks proper. And then
one of the things to expand on that as well, just on your end, right? And I know this will be near and dear to your heart because I know you and I used to do these all of the time, which is that you can do this right in workflow. So you can do it directly in HubSpot. Whether you're on the sales side or the ops side, you're probably very accustomed to exporting a whole bunch of data, throwing it into an Excel sheet, updating all of the different fields, re-importing it, finding out that you maybe didn't capitalize one thing or you had like an O'Shea in there or any of the O'Connors and having different pieces. And so really awesome. You can do this directly in HubSpot without sort of running into data limits or sort of timing out Excel for those of us on Macs as well. So really awesome that this is direct in HubSpot as well.
Yeah, another sort of use case as well, while we're in the middle of this, is if you're consistently sending any specific data, especially when it comes to dates and formatting. Other systems may require that a field be just a date instead of a date time, depending on how it's set up in HubSpot. So you can actually go and convert the format before you trigger a webhook to send it to another system as well. So if we go to the next one, there we go. And then so another thing, if companies, just using that example, if we want to go ahead and actually have everything formatted, we can do some data enrichment. So bringing in number of employees, some of the additional things that HubSpot has with their insights as well. But on companies, if you want to use like a Zoom info, you can actually bring that right in and do it all in a single workflow. That's really it.
Cool. So for the next one, I'll take here. So this is how you can use some of the custom coded actions. That's going to be on the Operations Hub Pro side for advanced deal assignments. So something that we run into frequently is folks that have sales teams and routing logic, whether at the contact level, the deal level, or you could even sort of extend this to some of your custom objects, which we'll talk about as well. And that logic doesn't necessarily fall into as simple as it's one field. So you can use just a simple if then, or perhaps you have hundreds or thousands of reps across regions and time zones and countries that you're trying to manage assignment for. And so a simple round robin just isn't powerful enough to manage for that deal distribution that you're trying to cover. So this example will be for reps that you have covering multiple states or zip codes or geo-mapped fence regions, or sort of any kind of assignment that's a more complicated than if this pick list value is a specific one, then assigned to a specific rep, or allow you to scale that up to a large volume of users as well. So if we jump ahead to the next one, I'll sort of walk through how you can do this piece of it. So this example would be if you want to assign a deal based on territory criteria using an Operations Hub coded action. So what this will be is it'll be a workflow. So you're going to trigger this workflow every time a deal is created, or if you only want to assign these deals once it hits a specific stage, you could add filters to that or for a specific pipeline as well. And so what you're going to do is use that coded JavaScript, hit the deals API. And what you're going to fetch from that deal is the deal and the associated contacts. So what are the contacts that are associated to that deal? From there, if you have a data table, so in this example, we've already loaded that up to HubDB. If you have that data table in a separate system, maybe you're maintaining it just in like a Snowflake or Redshift, or you have it in a different tool entirely that you can access via API, you could do that as well. And what you're going to do is compare the contact IP location. So here's what we're going to do is there's a default HubSpot field. It's one of our favorite ones that we use in a lot of different automations. But when a contact submits a form and gets created inside a HubSpot, it's going to pick up the IP location of that individual. And what you're going to be able to do then is compare, okay, so we have reps, they cover different regions, and maybe we just maintain that table. So we don't need to update our workflows. We don't need to update any of our processes. All we need to do is update that table when we add a new rep or change which regions people manage. And now you can assign that deal out to the IP location of that deal's primary contact. So the main benefit of this is not only is it automated, but it's also super scalable. I know we had a customer, this is probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and they had really complicated deal rules. And we probably spent 20, 30 hours a month every time a new rep was added or every time something else happened. We needed to go into the workflows tool, edit all of our logic, change which rules were going. And then we found out, wait, that's for a different pipeline. We have to go over here. And so you can consolidate all of that logic into one custom action in using sort of light JavaScript. To extend that one step further, something that we run into on occasion is this is especially pertinent for folks that sell either in person or have regional offices or franchises. And they often have sales reps who don't just manage a state or don't just manage a particular region. They actually manage a series of zip codes, or perhaps like an area that's within 2 miles of this particular office or this particular landmark. And so you could do something similar, which is when a deal is created, you could use Operations Hub and a coded action to hit the Google Maps API using the prospect's address. So sort of fetching that field either from the company record or the contact, or maybe you have a custom deal field, and fetch additional details. And then you could use your routing logic based off of a geofence location inside of Google Maps. So being able to sort of extend that further into the whole application, you can do a ton of automation. One quick question, again, if you have things that you guys are building, please throw them in the Q&A. We're going to go through one more example, and then we'll do some sort of live workshopping on things you guys want to build. But Sandeep asked in the main chat, which is, does this only work by creating JavaScript? For this specific example, and I think our next one too, we're doing examples using the coded actions inside of workflows with Operations Hub. And today those only support JavaScript. I do know that there's active work happening to extend that to other languages. I can't tell you when or how that's going to happen, but it's possible HubSpot folks could. But right now it only works with JavaScript, and you would need a developer to write that script. The good news is that the majority of these workflows can be powered by point and click automation. So you can enroll people using standard if-thens, you can have branches using standard HubSpot logic, and then you will need that piece of JavaScript. But I think the coolest part, in my opinion, for some of the Operations Hub coded actions is that they allow you to sort of weave that development work inside of tools that operations folks or anyone on the admin side can manage and turn on and turn off and enroll. But for this specific example, this is leveraging sort of JavaScript and APIs to power that. Sounds like that answered Sandeep's question. Cool. We'll go ahead and jump to our next example. Again, questions, please submit them in the Q&A. We'll jump into those after this last example. So Ryan, I will hand this one over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in certain cases where you've got a specific process after something is sold, one common area that's usually a bit of a fumble and can eat up a lot of time is just the handoff, taking someone who was a prospect to making them a customer. So part of it internal from sales to CS, and then also just actually activation. So getting someone into your product, especially when you have something that's based on a subscription model. So sales team usually can be pretty involved there, hand-holding, and just also the amount of time taking someone to get on board. So one of the things that you can do is actually connect through a coded action. So actually connect the workflow to grab that information that comes through and fire it off into an app, and actually go ahead and create the customer, get them onboarded, and start all of that without any involvement from a salesperson. So if we go, this is just the overview of the workflow, talk a little bit about how this would work inside HubSpot. But if a rep were to send a quote, it gets signed, we can automatically set that deal to closed won, and then actually create that custom coded action to send the company the related contacts and the line items, which in this case, in one that we've done, were certain features that can be turned on. So all of that can get fired into the app. Inside of the app, we can store those HubSpot IDs for easier reference later on, and have the app actually provision the account, notify the new customer, and then from there basically send information back. We can also take the information back to the company and have that stored, again, for easier connection later on, and then use common workflow things like round robins, or even what Connor mentioned, like additional assignments to CSM using a custom coded action, and even trigger like onboarding sequences. So the entire thing can be completely automated, so that a salesperson can just hand it off, hand the quote off to the customer, it gets signed, and everything else in the back end gets taken care of. No, I think that was it, actually.
I think for some specific examples on this one is we run into this for activation for maybe a post-sale process. If you're trying to spin up a user account inside of your app, we see this for ERP handoffs. So being able to sort of take a customer, upgrades, any type of flow. And I think every organization has, even if you're using every single part of HubSpot, it's likely you have other technology in and around your total business stack. And so one of the main values that we love to do with Operations Hub is being able to extend that into some of those other tools and either push data to, fetch data from, and automate some key processes.
Yeah, I don't think this only applies to SaaS. I mean, it can be sending data to your warehouse. It can be sending it really to any system, and we've worked with all kinds. Just again, a nice, easy way to take the manual effort and monitoring out of it.
Cool. I think we're going to jump into questions. I saw one from Sam. I'm going to grab this one. Oh, it looks like actually one of our producers may have pulled this in here. So this is great. If you have questions, we're going to start taking individual questions. Two ways these can work. If you have a, can I do this? How does this work? Can I build this? We'd also love to do live solutions design. So if you have something you're specifically trying to solve for, write up the spec for it, and we will discuss it and try to live give you some answers for this as well to hopefully get you started. One of the first ones that I'll grab here from Sam Anderson, which is, I understand a one-way custom integration is a great use case for Ops Hub. Is this faster to develop from the agency side? Curious of the business case to get clients to purchase the hub. And I saw in some of your chat, you were talking about versus building sort of like an API or something else. So I'll answer a little bit of that. And then Ryan, I'll let you sort of expand on this to whatever degree you're interested in. But I think one of the big things when we used to look at integrations with HubSpot and other products is, in order to get data out of HubSpot, you would need to have some sort of a middleware. So people would use sort of like an AWS function, or have sort of a server, or use like an ETL type tool. And that meant you needed to add additional products into your stack, or you needed to now maintain and host and manage a server that you're paying for. And so you need some sort of like middleware or an additional application. And so one of the main values of Operations Hub is you don't need that at all. You can build that directly inside of HubSpot. You can write that JavaScript directly inside of HubSpot. You don't need to build and maintain some additional tools and other sort of like pieces of your overall cloud footprint to make that happen. And what that's allowed us to do is actually look to our customers and say, where are you trying to get this data? How do you want to make that happen? And now we can write that script directly inside of HubSpot, instead of trying to go and say, hey, we can do that, but you're going to need to build and sort of pay for this AWS node. I think the other benefit, if you're on the service provider side, which it sounds like you are, Sam, is that either you need to pay for and maintain and manage this piece of middleware, or you have to sort of transition that to your customer. And I know that we found when we would build those types of solutions, if we sort of handed an AWS account to a customer with some node on it, that they couldn't manage it, they couldn't maintain it, they don't have the skills or the expertise in-house. And if they forgot to pay for it, then they come ask us, hey, this stopped working, like what's going on here? And so by building that directly in HubSpot, it just simplifies that whole process. It also makes it a lot easier for a HubSpot admin who doesn't necessarily know how to interact with that custom middleware, a lot easier for them to manage and maintain.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that, just to sort of simplify all the tools that we're using. It really, in a very professional sense, becomes less hacky, right? You're keeping everything in one system. You're not using paste on paste on paste of different products. I think that's a huge benefit. I see questions coming in two different places, but I'll go take this other one. Data cleanup for merges or pain HubSpot doesn't allow you to choose which custom properties to take priority. Is this possible? Not exactly sure. Names alone. Not. So if we're looking for matching criteria, I think is what we're looking for. Right. So it's ways to go through.
I think. Yeah, I think go for it, Ryan.
Go ahead.
I think I was going to extend on that, which is Operations Hub is a little different than the matching sort of window inside of HubSpot. I think in this particular case, how Operations Hub may be able to help you is actually formatting and standardizing some of that data to then make it easier for you to do merging or some of the database cleanup, whether you're doing it directly inside of HubSpot or whether you're doing it using like an InCycle or one of the marketplace tools. I think the value of putting Operations Hub at the front end is that you can standardize all of those data elements and then make it a lot easier for whatever your matching process is to sort of find and connect those dots.
Yeah, I see another one that was actually in the chat about creating custom meeting outcomes using HubSpot. So I don't see why you couldn't have workflows that set particular meeting outcomes based on the result. If you want to add some details to that question, but yeah, I mean, absolutely, you can use that depending on the workflow and the action, either from something within HubSpot or from an external system. If that's what you're getting at, then absolutely you could set that.
I think what could be really interesting there too is you may be able to take sort of a engagement workflow or a workflow that runs off of contact of something like last meeting booked date is today. And then you could maybe go and hit either external APIs or just query that contact using a coded action, and you could add more context there, and then you could detail out some type of a contact property, right? So you could go and say, okay, did this person actually come to this event? Are they on the attendee list for that particular Zoom meeting ID? Something that we built or in the process of building for an events company right now is pulling against the Zoom meetings API to check for attendees. And so you could do something similar there to then say, oh, they aren't an attendee on this event, so we're going to update them to, no show or something to that effect, which could be an interesting use case there as well.
Yeah, one other thing you could also do actually is updating with engagements in particular with data that's existing in another system. So one problem that we ran into prior to Operations Hub was having to create a new engagement for activity in an external system for a host of reasons. But you could easily, ingest what the result was from another system and go and find that exact engagement ID if you have it, and then actually update the outcome from there.
Two questions I saw in the chat that I'll speak to. I see one of our producers is answering some of them in the chat as well. But for anyone wondering about a recording, the recording will be available. It'll be shared. Sign up on the direct landing page. Make sure you have that submitted, and then the recording will be sent out to everyone there. And then another one that I saw is, are we doing example code for this? So the answer for that one is no. We've done some things like that in the past, and we found that the audience isn't necessarily all developers. I would recommend checking out Jack Caldrick, who is somebody that we had on one of these webinars previously. He's a HubSpot solutions engineer. Follow him on LinkedIn. He has amazing lists of examples and actual live code that's more geared for the development audience directly, that I would definitely check out. He links out to GitHub repos with sample code, lots of really, really good content that I would check out. Question from Melissa West. So if you're still on the starter level, how do you get to the Operations Hub features? So I believe if you're on, in order to make use of some of the starter levels, I'm going to answer this question two ways, because I'm not sure which one you're referring to for to starter. But for if you're on Operations Hub starter, the Operations Hub features are inside of your workflows tool. So you're going to get access to additional workflow steps. So there's the enriched data, format data actions that will show up inside of workflows. Additionally, for the integration tools, you will be able to find inside of the app marketplace the list of applications that are supported by Operations Hub, and you can sort of access and connect via the marketplace as well. And then if you have Operations Hub Starter, you'll be able to access custom fields and sort of other items on those. I saw you clarified you're on Sales and Marketing Starter. So Operations Hub Starter, and ask your HubSpot rep for the best answer to this question, but I'll try to give you mine, which is, if you're only on Sales and Marketing Starter, I'm not sure how much value. I think the value of an Operations Hub Starter would be you could connect it to other systems. So if you were using Zendesk or Pipedrive or some of the other connected tools via Operations Hub, you may get value if you're doing sales and marketing, because you could sync your contacts between those systems. But for the workflow actions inside of both Pro and Starter, you would need at least one professional hub so that you could access those pieces. I saw one in here from John Peden, which is, what is the limit of leads you can put into this app? I'm not sure I understand that question. I would say HubSpot itself does not have a limit that I know of. I believe it's extremely high, because I know we have active customers with tens of millions of records. So it's extremely high if there is an upper bound. I'm not sure what it is, but you can put as many contacts inside of HubSpot as you want. And then on the Marketing Pro side, there's sort of different costs depending on your marketing contacts, but you can store as many contacts as you would like inside of HubSpot. For Melissa, really looking at data cleanup options to get a fresh start. Yeah, I think Operations Hub's a good one. I would also check out some different marketplace applications. So we really like InCycle is one that we've used. I don't know if there's other ones. I know that one's just because I've talked to those guys before. If there's any that come to your mind, Ryan, but I would check out those if you connect them to HubSpot.
InCycle is definitely one. It depends on what your data looks like, for sure. I mean, Operations Hub's like an easy fix in a lot of situations, especially if it's going to be ongoing. It'll be a little faster as well, but InCycle is also a really good tool that we use a lot.
Yeah, if you connect that to your HubSpot work, they have lots of sort of cleanup and other places. And then Operations Hub has good data formatting. I think you could do both of those. They'd potentially help. And that should be able to get you reasonably started. We went through a bunch of Q&A. I know we're moving quickly. If anyone else has anything else, please.
Building an internal referral system. There's actually a really good blog article. I can find it on building a referral system.
Yeah, we actually, so Rahul, we've done some of this. I'll speak to it and then I'll let Ryan maybe find the article that we can share with you. So Rahul's question is, another thing we're trying to build internally inside of HubSpot is a referral system. So the problem is referred by can be a text field, but need a way to link it like deals and contacts are linked on the right side. So what we've done is we've actually built a custom object for referral. And then we originally were using coded actions. We built an app, which is a little bit different. I'll put the link in here. I won't talk about it too much. But we were doing this frequently enough that we built just like a standalone application for it called Associate, which allows you to sort of link records based off of unique IDs. I'll throw the link to that in the chat. But what we're doing, so for that action, you could do it with coded automation as well, is if a custom object is created, so we're using that referral object, and then we have a workflow. So when a contact submits a form and they have a field that's like put in the email of the person you're referring, they submit that, and then we create a custom object called referral, and then we use our application for Associate. But you could do the exact same thing with a coded action to go look up a contact inside the system that has that email address for the referred contact, and then we link both of those contacts to the referral object, and then we populate the referee. I hate referrals because the language is incredibly confusing. We put the referee and the referer on two custom object properties, and then you can report on those custom objects, and you can show how many people have people referred, who's the highest referring individual, and you can do all of that off the custom object report, which is super cool. So we're doing that for a couple of customers right now, actually. And I think, Ryan, you found that article as well.
Yeah.
Cool. There's also an article in the chat that you can check out that has a really good use case of that I think includes some example code. Oh yeah, it's got example code.
Yeah, it's high level. There's a couple other examples on enriching data as well, and so validating email address. So using external services, as we talked about, obviously a big use case for Operations Hub.
I think Jack Koldrick also wrote that one. Jack's awesome. I'd follow him on LinkedIn. He's great. We really like him. He's a good guy. We've done a couple of these with him. Any other Q&A, questions, chat, other items from other folks? We're also happy to just continue to talk to specific people. I have one here for Sam. So I've heard an example to give greater context in the last touch before a sales deal. Can you talk a little? Oh, I can talk more about this. We do this all the time. So Sam's question is, heard of an example to give greater context in the last touch before a sales deal. So this is one that so our demand generation team runs into all of the time, and we get asked. So what we've done is, and we're doing this on some custom coded actions, subscribe to, if you subscribe to me on LinkedIn, Sam, it's very likely we'll have an app purpose built for this at some point in the near future that we'd love to get your input on as well. But we sort of have it strung together in a couple of portals right now. So what we're doing and is very cool is using a custom coded action. So this would be when a deal hits a certain stage. So in your example, it could be closed won, but you could use the same logic here for deal create as well. So maybe you want to go fetch what the interaction was prior to a deal getting created. And so what we're doing is when a deal is marked closed won, we're using a coded action to hit the deals API and grab the list of associated contacts. And then we're going and taking those contacts and we're going and checking what was the last marketing engagement that they did prior to that deal being marked closed won. So if you have one contact, maybe you want to go pull it and say, and you could filter this down if you only want to look at web visits or emails, or you could say, I want to include everything. And what was the last thing that they interacted with prior to actually becoming a closed won deal. And then that coded action is going and updating that deal record with some sort of a tag informed by those values. So something we have a customer that's doing is they want to know, was it the last thing before a deal closed? Was it that they downloaded an ebook? Did they come to a webinar? Did they, like, what were the things? And they have specific sort of, they have long sales cycles. So their behavior is largely, how can I influence deals down the pipeline? And so we can go and grab that piece of information and then stamp the deal with either the campaign name of that particular asset, or maybe it's just the name of the asset or a link or whatever sort of you want to use. But what that lets them do is they can actually look at all of their deals and say which categories are driving these deals to get to closed won while they're in flight. And you can do something similar for when the deal's created, when the deal hits proposal stage, or whatever you sort of want to filter by. But that's a really good example of where you can use coded automation to go grab data from inside of HubSpot that you can't necessarily just grab with like a standard workflow, and then stamp it onto the deal. And so you can do really advanced reporting on some of those. And what you can do then is you can just use a deal report. So instead of trying to sort of combine the campaigns tool, all the marketing tools, all of the different deal reporting, just try to string that together. You can just run a deal report and show in a column what was the last touch channel for these deals and report on that. But that's a really good use case that we have done a couple of times.
I see two other questions. Solution of duplicate records. I think we touched on this a little bit in the chat. Duplicate records to import from multiple sources. I think one of the easy things that you can do, even though it won't necessarily be for duplicate cleanup, is identification of duplicates. So if you wanted to do a lookup, on Create, we can look for some similar, like an address or a name. If we wanted to do some sort of matching and just mark that contact or company for deletion, that's definitely something that we can do. But typically you want to handle deduping before it comes into the system. I think would make your life a lot easier. But certainly if you wanted to go through and check and mark certain people based on whatever the matching criteria is, you could definitely run that. And then the other question.
Wait, let me jump on that one as well. So there's HubSpot has a duplication tool. The data sync on the HubSpot operation side is less of a deduplication platform. So there's already another deduplication functionality inside of HubSpot. I'll pop this one to the chat. The other one that we would recommend checking out, feel free to tell them we sent you their way. We know these guys pretty well, is InCycle. They're a marketplace application that does really awesome deduplication and rules and merging and logic in the marketplace. And it's they're pretty inexpensive. I know we use them across a whole bunch of different records. The base tier on their website says free. So I'm sure as you slide that up in terms of number of contacts, it gets more expensive, but they're great. Highly recommend. Feel free to tell them that we sent them your direction, but check out InCycle. I put the link in the chat for that one, but for a deduplication tool for those pieces.
Let's see. The other question I have: involvement between passing sales types from business development executive to business development manager. I'm not sure if you mean the handoff between from one rep to another, like scheduling calls. But yeah, certainly if that's recording who the previous rep was and changing owners. Yeah, and certainly that could definitely be done. I think you could do most of that through actually a regular workflow. If you want to expand a little bit on that particular question, I'd be happy to shed some more light on it though. Do you have any there in the chat? No, that's not a question.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through.
Yeah. See if we missed anything.
Sandeep, if you have clarification, we can touch on that one more. I think our answer would be yes. We've had involvement passing between business development executive and business development manager, but I'm not sure what else to expand on beyond a yes on that one, but we'd be happy to touch on it more for sure. Anything else from any of our attendees? Oh, Sandeep says once owner has changed, we're unable to see who the previous owner is. Yeah, so there's two ways you could do this. Actually, you could use Operations Hub. I guess this. I actually don't think you would need to. So if you used a standard HubSpot workflow, you could actually stamp the owner into like a previous owner field and sort of copy that value one to the other. If you could not do that with the standard workflows, which may be true because owner fields are weird, is you could use Operations Hub to do the same thing. So you could hit the record, grab the owner, and then paste the owner into a field. And if you wanted, and you could do this with Operations Hub, which is if you wanted to have 3 or 4 previous owner fields, so like previous owner 1, previous owner 2, something like that, you could use Operations Hub to say, go find out when, like right before you change the owner, go find who the owner is, find out like which previous owner fields are populated, and then paste the name of that person or the email or whatever you want into that field. And it could sort of like roll through a list of properties, but you could do that with an Operations Hub workflow for sure. And I think you can do it with the standard workflow. Ryan, you would be closer to it, but maybe not close enough. I don't, I just know user properties are weird.
Yeah, we've had situations where certain fields and history is extremely important and they want to report on it as well. In a really extreme example, you could even store some of that information in a custom object if you need that history like readily accessible as well. So
Amy came to the rescue here. Amy Riodica says you can copy and paste the previous owner without Ops Hub at the moment, which I think is true. So you should be able to do that there as well. Melissa asked, please confirm InCycle is the app you mentioned earlier for data cleanup. It is, yeah. It is. We like them. They're great. If you shoot me an email, I put my email in the chat. I'd be happy to introduce you directly to the folks over there too. And we'd be happy to help you. Sam, any limitations so far? Ops Hub can do anything as long as the data exists somewhere in HubSpot. Yes, it is the answer. There are some limitations. So I'll talk about 2 that I know the team is actively working on that we've run into that are worth touching on. So one is on the Operations Hub starter. Syncing a field supports primarily text values. So there's issues when I know we have a customer who has like a drop down and a pick list is not able to sync from Dynamics into HubSpot. So like one answer could be, paste that Dynamics pick list value into a text value inside of Dynamics and then sync that one over. In their particular case, they're a massive multinational organization, and adding a text field to Dynamics is an incredibly difficult thing to do. So that didn't work quite well for them. But that's one sort of thing on the Operations Hub starter that's limited. There's definitely workarounds. On the pro side, if you can write that custom code, there are compute time limitations. They're pretty high. We haven't run into a lot of them, but if you have a serverless function that's running for, I think it's like, I don't know. It's also hard because if you explain seconds in terms of computation time, it doesn't really mean anything because computers are very fast.
Yeah. There's a period of time.
There is an upper bound. There's an upper bound of compute time. So if you have like a circuitous function or sort of a loop, you could theoretically time out your serverless function, but that's to help you as opposed to hurt you, because if it ran indefinitely, it would be no bueno. But that's a limitation. The other one that we've run into that you can currently, anything that's triggered inside of HubSpot, you can run an Operations Hub action on. So what that means is like if you can't send a webhook from another system and push it into HubSpot, and you can't take like when someone checks out in my Amazon store, I want these things to happen in HubSpot because the coded action has to get triggered from HubSpot. So HubSpot has to have the logic that says to go get it. So we've solved that in 2 ways. One is essentially building like batch classes inside of HubSpot, basically. So you'd have 2 workflows that trigger each other. So one would be update this contact property to yes, and then run this coded action. And then at the end of the workflow, update it to no. And then the next workflow could say, wait 1 hour, run this coded action, and then update that contact property to yes. And then they basically hand each other back and forth. And then you could build an hourly batch or a nightly batch that way, where each coded action goes and fetches data from another system. So you could sort of have like a triggered sync that way, even if the data is not happening, or even if the event, Ryan's like looking up. So he's like, oh, this is cool. So my sole goal in life is impressing Ryan with all of these Operations Hub stuff. But you could do the back and forth yo-yoing of those workflows. That's one solution. The other solution is in CMS Hub Enterprise, so if you're on an enterprise bundle, this is a really cool way that you can build some really sophisticated stuff, which is CMS Hub Enterprise has serverless functions, which you can point webhooks at. So if you have a webhook firing from another system to HubSpot, it's not an operations hub feature. Please tell the product team that it should be. I tell them all of the time, but it's not an operations hub feature, but you can access serverless functions inside of CMS Enterprise, and those can receive webhooks. So you could do sort of a bi-directional call and response framework between HubSpot and another system. If those actions are triggered somewhere else, send a webhook to HubSpot, serverless function receives them, and then a coded action sends some data back as well. I just talked for a really long time. I hope that was followable, and I apologize if I blurted a bunch of information at a bunch of folks. We're going to give another like 30 seconds. Oh, cool. We got another question. So from Amy, copy and pasting date fields to different date field properties break in regular workflows, doesn't actually copy the date. It's sometimes one day ahead or behind. In Ops workflow, does this work in Ops Hub? So one of the functions of Ops Hub is copying and sort of matching date properties or other properties between systems. What I do know is with Starter, at launch, there were some limitations on date fields. I do not know with absolute certainty if those have been patched. Really good question for your HubSpot rep, but I think that the answer is with a coded action 100%, because you can essentially do anything you want. Whether or not that's in Starter, I'm not 100% sure, but that is a use case for Operations Hub. So even if it's something that isn't in there yet, I would anticipate it would be in there in pretty short order as well. But I'm not 100% sure on that one, Amy.
There's another question about using coded actions to copy line items. So it's an extraordinarily common use case that comes up, doing anything really with line items. So converting line items to, in some cases, custom objects, the equivalent of assets. But yes, absolutely that you can do that. So if you need to take specific line items and turn them into something else, whether that's line items on a specific deal, yes, you can definitely do that.
Yeah, that's one that we've done a couple of times. Another one that's similar in a use case is actually using on Operations Hub coded action too. So we have a customer that uses line items for service lines. So basically, like for each distinct service line, they would have one line item and then whatever the quantity is. And so we're using Operations Hub coded action to actually generate tickets for each line item. So when that deal goes to closed won, we're going and grabbing all those associated line items, generating tickets for each line item. So one ticket per line item. I think that they have a pipeline for each one as well, but that's not super relevant. And then they're generating a ticket, and then they're moving those tickets along so that way they can have a seamless handoff from sales to actual like implementation and service delivery by then managing tickets as that post-sale object. And that's essentially the exact same process as copying a deal with those line items as well. Business units. I'm happy to speak a little bit about business units. Business units are not a part of sort of the Operations Hub side. I think it's just an enterprise and some of the other tools. But business units let you segment out data inside of HubSpot in a bunch of different ways. So you can control what people can access, what people can see, what they can edit, and you can structure that in terms of different business units. You can host and support multiple brands. So if you have I know we have a customer right now who has for health supplements, they have a pet line, and then they have a people line, I guess. And so the business units allows them to sort of like represent both of those in the same hub, same portal. And so that's what business units are for. I think that that's an enterprise feature. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it's inside of Operations Hub, but is another one we're excited about. I actually think we're going to do content around that in the coming months. But cool.
One other question about HubSpot being different and Aptitude compared to the rest of the CRMs in the market. I don't know that this applies to Operations Hub specifically, but I think expandability with Operations Hub makes it pretty powerful. I think just on the whole, obviously there are positives and negatives to every system that we're not really necessarily going to get into. But I think one thing that makes HubSpot really great is just one, continued expansion, development, listening to users, and then certainly Operations Hub is part of this, just user experience as well. So making sure that people can actually use the product versus making something extraordinarily complicated that no one can ever figure out. And I think HubSpot does a really good job, even with the inclusion of Operations Hub, of forcing you to kind of keep things clean and usable as well.
Cool. I think that is all of our questions. Thank you guys so much for coming and attending. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow our content, ask us questions. We love talking about this kind of stuff. And then you can send Ryan or I an email with any questions you may have, projects you guys directly are working on. We'd be delighted to see if we can help directly or just point you in the right direction. And thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.